If you told me that I could only have one camera for the rest of my life, as surprising as it sounds, I'd choose my iPhone, not my super fancy camera setup. And I know you've already been told thousands of times that the best camera is the one that's in your pocket. But how do you get the most out of it and truly unlock its full potential? Well, in today's video, I'll be breaking down the perfect settings, tips, and tricks I've learned after 8 years of creating content, as well as how to properly edit in a way that allows you to achieve the highest quality possible. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be so much more confident when it comes to taking photos. Before I dive into everything, I've included in the YouTube description a more in-depth guide to mastering your iPhone's camera and video settings for social media. This goes far beyond the material in today's video, as it's a complete guide. I've also included my Lightroom presets designed for your iPhone, and towards the end of the video, I'll be applying the presets and showcasing how to properly use them. So feel free to pick them up and follow along as you watch. First things first, unlock your phone, click settings, and scroll down to camera. At the top, for me, you'll only see this option, which is camera control, if you have an iPhone 16, 16 Pro, or 16 Pro Max. That's because these settings are designed for the camera control button. So if you don't have that, it doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna briefly show you what I have. I've kept this on my camera, but I do cycle between my Blackmagic camera, which I'm planning to make a dedicated video on the best video settings for your iPhone. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, let me know in the comments. I just have it set to single click on the camera, and this is the easiest way that I've just found to launching my camera super quick, and I really don't even need the camera application because my camera control button has essentially replaced it. Going back, one of the newest things that was introduced to the iPhone was photographic styles. And to be fully transparent with you, I really don't use them, and I honestly don't recommend that you use them. The reason for this is because when I take a picture, I like to retain as much natural quality as I possibly can. Think of it this way. Imagine every time you go to take a picture, a preset is already slapped on top of that. So you're super limited, and if you want to change it to anything later, you're gonna be changing it based off the preset. So clicking on formats, under camera capture, you have the option between high efficiency and most compatible. I have actually recently switched to high efficiency over most compatible, which I recently shot on for a while. The reason that I shot with most compatible is because it would apparently retain more quality, but after switching back due to storage issues, I haven't noticed a lack in quality going back to high efficiency, and if anything, it's actually been better because it's reduced the file size, meaning I'm able to take more raw images without filling up my iCloud storage or my internal iPhone storage. Under photo capture, I have this set to 24 megapixels. You're obviously gonna wanna set it to as high as you possibly can, depending on what phone that you have. Do keep in mind, if you are on an older iPhone, you might not see every feature that I'm going through. ProRAW and resolution control is the most important feature. This is a Pro exclusive option. Plain and simple, if you want the best images from an iPhone, the Pro models are obviously gonna give you the best results. And under Pro default, I have this set to Pro RAW Max up to 48 megapixels and JPEG XL lossy. After a lot of research as well as trial and error, this compression mode has given me the best results. Think about it this way. After you've taken an image, if you want to crop it or zoom in as you're editing the photo, this is going to retain the most amount of quality the more you zoom in. Going back, arguably the most overlooked part of setting up your camera are your preserved settings. Whenever you relaunch your camera, these are gonna keep your settings the exact same. If you've ever been in that situation where you've wanted to quickly capture the moment, but realize your settings are all discombobulated and messed up, this is going to fix that. Camera mode I have on, control menu I have off. You can keep this on, I just prefer it off. Photographic styles, as previously mentioned, I like to keep this off. I just never find myself ever using it. However, if you've created a style that you enjoy and tend to use in a lot of your photos, just keep this on. I just really don't feel like a lot of people are actually using it as much as Apple thought they would. Creative controls I have on, depth controls I have off, macro control I have on. I love keeping this on. A lot of people turn it off. I just don't know why. What this does is shows that little flower icon in the bottom left corner. So if I'm going to take a macro photo, and depending on my environment or lighting, I just wanna see what it would look like if I turned it off, I can toggle between that, and I just love having it on. Exposure adjustment I have on. I found that straight out of my iPhone's camera, my images tend to be overexposed, and I'll talk about this more later, how to kind of fix this, but make sure you have this on. Night mode I have on as well. I've really enjoyed taking low light photos with my iPhone recently. A lot of people tend to not like this mode, but when used correctly, it's amazing. Portrait mode I have on as well. Action mode I have off. Pro RAW and resolution control, keep this on. Apple ProRes, keep this on if you're shooting log video, and live photo, keep this on as well. Back into main settings, use volume up for burst, on, scan QR codes, on, show detected text on. These are just helpful everyday things to have on. They don't really impact your photo quality. It's just peace of mind type of thing. Composition scares a lot of people because they think it's gonna affect the quality, when in reality, it's like the best settings that Apple have ever introduced. Make sure your grid is turned on. This allows you to use the rule of thirds, and if you have no idea what that is, it helps you center images or take the type of picture that you want to, so when you actually go to take that picture, it's going to look like the way you took it and you won't be disappointed. Level, make sure this is on. This is a recent addition that I love. Mirror front camera off, view outside frame off. After 8 years of creating content, I've just always kept these off. I found them to be annoying when I go to take pictures. It's just a preference. You can keep them on if that's something that you enjoy. Inside Fusion camera, I have 28mm on, 35mm on, and my default is set to 24mm, which is the 1X. Portraits and photo are on, prioritize faster shooting on, lens correction on, macro control, again, is on. Now that we've perfectly dialed in our settings, it's time to actually open the camera app and fully understand everything that this truly has to offer. In the top left, we have flash, and you can actually press and hold on this to switch between flash auto and on and off. I keep this off almost all the time. I made the mistake of keeping this on, and this ruined a lot of my photos. Probably noticed this before, but your iPhone sometimes gets confused when the light is low or you're trying to shoot in low light conditions, and it'll just automatically turn on the flash, which ruins the shot. Unless you're going for that type of aesthetic or that type of photo, rule of thumb, keep it off. Night mode is honestly one of my favorite additions. I always keep this off because I've actually found, surprisingly enough with the flash, that my iPhone is able to recognize low light. As you can see, if I lift it up, it's sensing light, so it's gonna turn it off, but when I cover the camera, it's gonna toggle on the night mode as well, and depending on how dark the image is, it'll show you 3 seconds, 5 seconds, how long you're gonna have to wait after you've taken the picture before it'll fully process. Super cool feature. To the right of that is that exposure meter that I previously talked about. This is kind of like a quick axis, pretty much, and this allows you to customize your exposure. Now, as previously mentioned, I found that your iPhone, most iPhones, overexpose a lot of images. So a good rule of thumb is I set mine to -3, and this has kind of just properly corrected it. Because we have those preserved settings on, if you set it to a specific exposure adjustment, just keep in mind every time you relaunch your camera application, it's going to be set to that type of exposure, if that makes sense. To the right of that is RAW Max, and you can actually press and hold on this and change the actual file, but the best is just to keep it on RAW Max. Do keep in mind this will take up a lot of storage. That's why I shoot on high efficiency. So if you're just shooting something like, maybe I'm taking a picture of something to send to my mom, I'm gonna turn this off because there's no point to take a raw image when I'm not gonna be editing something that I'm just sending super quick. To the right of that, we have live photo. Keep in mind, when you turn on live photo, it turns off the capability of shooting in RAW. Depending on the environment or situation, I frequently use live photos because of the long exposure effect, which I'll show you right now. After you've taken a live photo, if you go up to the top left, you can actually change the effect almost. And if you click on the long exposure effect, if there's a lot of light introduced to a photo, this can create a really cool effect. It's super cool that I actually like using is the bounce effect. So as you can see, the wind from my window is blowing my notepad paper, and it just adds this cool effect. To the right of that are your photographic styles. You can toggle between them if you enjoy them and mess around with the color temperature as well. At the bottom, we have our macro control, which is that little flower that I toggled. So if I go to take a picture of my camera lens, for example, it's gonna show up. If I turn it off and get really close, as you can see, it's gonna look super blurry. But if I turn it on, it's gonna turn on that macro mode and work. Sometimes I like to have this off depending on what the background looks like, but 9 times out of 10, the macro photos on your iPhone, super good, as long as you have enough lighting. They tend to suffer if you have bad lighting, so just keep that in mind. A little tip a lot of people don't seem to know about is if you swipe up, you can actually access a lot of the important features, such as your flash, live photo, and your photographic styles. You can also adjust your aspect ratio from 4:3, square, and even 16:9. This is nice for social media. I just tend to shoot in 4:3 because if I want to crop it to 16:9, I'm tending to do that in post-processing. If you have RAW Max off and you turn on your timer and you take an image, it will take a burst of photos, which is actually super cool. But if you have RAW on, yeah, as you can see, we can cycle between 10 bursted photos. But if you have RAW on, I'll show you right now, say I turn it on and you take a 3-second timed image, it won't take a burst of photos. It will just take one photo. So just keep that in mind. Now I'm gonna cover how to properly understand each one of your camera lenses on your iPhone to know which one you should be shooting with. The main camera is going to be your 48 megapixel, which is going to retain the best amount of quality and what I recommend you shoot with the most. The ultra wide camera is only 12 megapixels, and I've noticed from personal use that they tend to result in a way darker image. So unless you're shooting landscapes or images where there's a lot of light, I don't actually recommend shooting a wide angled lens unless you have a lot of light let in, so you can kind of compensate for that quality loss or that sensor that isn't as good as a 48 megapixel would be. Last but not least, if you are on the Pro model, you'll have what's called a telephoto lens, which allows you to access that 5x optical zoom. This is great for portraits or capturing distant subjects, but do keep in mind you will experience that digital zoom, which will also lead to a quality loss. If there's one thing that you take away from understanding your lenses, or just this video as a whole, it's when you shoot in 1x or 24 millimeters, you will retain the most amount of quality. Now onto the fun part, and that's editing your photos. I have fallen in love with this process, especially over the past year or two, and have experimented with tons of different presets and really spent a lot of time learning how to properly edit an image, especially for social media, which typically all my images are uploaded to. There are 2 editing ways that are both free that I can suggest to you. First is actually directly in your Photos app. This has improved a lot, and you can start by just clicking auto, which I've noticed actually does a decent job, but with raw images, you're gonna wanna be a little bit more intentional. So you can adjust things such as your exposure if you maybe didn't dial it in pre-taking the picture, your brilliance, highlights. I always like to drop my highlights and up my shadows. It's just kind of a habit of mine, and up my contrast a little bit. You can adjust brightness as well, and your black point, saturation, vibrance, warmth, tint, sharpness, definition, noise reduction, and vintage. It actually has a lot. It's very, very impressive. But leading on to the second editing software, that is Lightroom Mobile. This is completely free. I suggest you download it because it will change your life completely, I promise. As previously mentioned, I've created 10, actually 11, Lightroom presets designed for your iPhone. So if you'd like to pick those up and follow along, now is the perfect time. But after you've imported your image into Lightroom, you're gonna wanna click on it. And in this case, we're gonna take an image that was shot in the raw picture profile right after the sunset over this really nice bridge with the water in the background. And we're just gonna kind of tweak it and show you my exact editing. After you've installed my presets, it's as simple as clicking on presets. And as you'll see, you'll have each one numbered perfectly all the way from 1 through 11. And I always start by just kind of clicking on each just to get a rough idea of what I'm liking and the style I'm going for when I'm editing. Let's take number 2. I just like what I did with the sky, and I don't always slap it on and go with it. Sometimes I do if it looks perfect, but I tend to make some small minor adjustments. So I'll come over here to the exposure. In order to see the before and after, it's as simple as pressing and holding on the image. This will show you the before and the after. Now my contrast, I'm gonna up that a little bit. My highlights, I actually like this. I'm gonna turn my highlights down just a little bit just because of the clouds. My shadows, I'm gonna up this just because I like the effect it has on the waves. Now under color, I do think this is a little bit saturated, so I'm gonna bring that down a little bit. Under blur, I don't really touch this. A recent effect that I've really enjoyed is actually under the effects tab, under grain. I love adding grain to images. Sometimes if you overdo it, it can look bad, and especially for landscapes, it's not my personal favorite. But for a lot of my images, I just add a touch of grain and we're done. It's that simple. All you have to do, there's no fancy rendering settings, just tap the 3 dots, save to device. It'll take a couple seconds, and boom, you have a very well edited photo of anything. This next image is more darker, so we're gonna just go through and actually try to kind of see what I'm like. I'll just show you my process a little bit more rapid fire. The way I go about this is I pretty much just pick a base preset that I like, go in and just make small minor adjustments. My major adjustments I'll typically make are exposure, highlights, shadows, and the color temperature. So if I want this image to be more warmer, I'm obviously gonna increase the Kelvin or temperature. And if I want it to be cooler, I'm gonna decrease that. But I honestly like the way this image came out. Again, I just love the grain, so I'm gonna go into effects and add a little bit of grain, and I'm done. I'm gonna hit the 3 dots in the top right corner, and I'm done. This next image is a steak that I made, and I just thought it looked really, really cool. Again, we're gonna go through my LUTs. Ooh, I'm liking the blue tint that I have. Now, what you could do is you literally could slap on this preset and go about your day and save the image and post it. I mean, that's really how good they are, as they work really, really well because they are designed for your iPhone. But because this image is a little bit bright, I'm gonna drop the exposure ever so slightly. And I kinda wanna mess with the color temperature. I kinda like the colder look. I just think it looks much better. I feel like it's pulling out more of the detail. And as you can see, the iPhone just does such a good job. You can see the literal grease on the left side. I mean, that's just how much detail. And boom, you're done, just like that. This next photo is one of my favorites. As you can see, straight from the camera, it looks very, very bland. Not much to it, pretty dark, pretty gray. Could use a lot of help, but this is why shooting in RAW is so important. Remember, it's all about the editing. Look, I could be done. That's my first LUT. That's the Jaden #1, by the way, JC #1, and I could be done. I adjust these curves just a little bit just to bring down the light in the top portion of everything. I'm not a professional editor. I've just, over time, found what I really, really enjoy, and we're done. If you guys did go on to enjoy today's video, make sure you like and subscribe and turn on those post notifications so you never miss a future upload. We're closing in on 100,000, so I really appreciate you guys. Comment if you have any questions. I literally do my best to respond to all of them as best as possible. And with that said, I will catch you guys in the next one.